Welcome to Community Conversations. I'm your host, KK Konashiro. Anyone who's put a budget together for their family or business knows how complicated it can be. In this ever-changing landscape of legislation, unexpected expenditures, and revenue streams, maintaining a budget for a large school district is especially challenging, and not to mention under this global pandemic. Here to provide us an update with all things financial at Fremont Unified is Associate Superintendent Marcus Battle and Budget Director Rais Abashi. Thank you so much for being here.
Glad to be here.
You two have a very tough job. I cannot even fathom what you have to go through. But you just presented the district the second interim budget for the school board. Can you give us a clue of what happened? Any good news, any bad news? What can we expect?
Well, there was actually a lot of good news. Yeah, there's a lot of good news. From a few years ago, we've made a lot of progress on our budget. We were hit with a major setback a few years ago with our enrollment. Right. That was when our enrollment started to decline, and the decline was actually bigger than we thought, which did impact our finances. And over the past few years, we've had to make budget reductions 2 years in a row to compensate for that. So what our second interim does show that just was approved by the board is that we have made a lot of progress. It shows that we do have a healthier financial picture. Our enrollment has stabilized, which is very important. We're finding it better able to manage and plan our future budget based on that. We had restored our budget's reserve. The board has established an additional 1% reserve and an additional 0.5% reserve, and we were able to restore those at second interim for the next 3 years, actually. Okay. So a lot of good news. I could go on and on, but the one thing that we pride ourselves on in Fremont is that we continue our positive certification. Our budget was positively certified. Our district, as far as I know, has never received a qualified or negative certification from the county.
Nice.
Nice. So we are still showing great progress in that way.
Rais, do you want to say anything about that?
Yes. One thing I want to mention is that it has been a big, huge team project.
Yes.
Because as you mentioned, that Fremont has almost $1 billion budget. 400 million is operating budget, general fund, plus some other funds. So it's a very large budget, and it has layers of complications. So it's not easy to just go through the process, because you have to talk to community leadership, talk to Board of Education, administration, principals, all staff levels. So it goes through a very long, tedious process. I mean, take one example, one budget solution item. It goes through layers of complications, analyses before we finalize that. And I'm glad that Marcus has been a very great leader, because not only he came up with a list of all the budget balancing solutions, but walk us through and go through the process completely. It has been a tiring process, but I'm glad that we are at this point in a very good position.
Now, is this the time, now that it's been finalized, can you guys relax a little bit? Or is this an all year round kind of stress, I guess?
I'll defer to Rais on that. And I'll be honest, Rais and his team do a lot of the heavy lifting. So I'm sure that when we get to this point, they are able to exhale for a little while.
Yeah.
Where they start ramping up again. Is that about right, Rais?
Absolutely correct. Yeah. So budgeting is a very dynamic process. Budgeting never stops, because it's connected from one time period to the next time period. There are no breaks in between. It's a continuing process. Revenues, expenditures, the analysis, the calculations, they never ever stop. So the minute we finish our second interim report, we start the process for building next year's budget. At the same time, we are working on current year's estimated actuals.
But I will say this, Kiki, Rais and his team makes it look easy. They do a great job.
Thank you, Marcus.
So originally, you guys, or the school district, was going to have a humongous dollar amount to cut, and it was reduced. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because that's exciting news.
Yes. Originally, the county had required the district to cut 17 million from the budget, and as you
Wow.
said, that was a huge task.
Yes.
And we were on our way to providing recommendations in that regard. But what we did as a team, Rice, and I'll give Rice and his team the credit, they expedited the review of the second interim. They were actually finished about a week ahead of schedule. And they did that so that we could
Wow.
have a conversation with the county. So with that information, we were able to discuss it internally and vet it and go through it. Then we were able to present it to the county and just say, hey, we want you to take another look at our budget. We believe that it shows improvement based on the governor's funding we're going to get from the state and just tightening and things that we've done internally. And the county concurred with our analysis, and we were able to reduce that 17 million to 7 million, which
Yay.
provided a big relief for our community, for our board, and for our superintendent.
Now that's a great segue into my next question. Now the governor and state legislature will provide funding for our schools. What can Fremont expect to receive as far as that help is going?
So right now, there are 2 grants that we are expecting from the state, and the governor has already signed off on them. One is what's described as the in-person grant, and we are estimated to get about $10 million from that. But there are some hoops that we'll have to jump to get that. Because our county is now in the red tier, it does require that we would have to get the full 10 million, we would have to open all of our K6, K5, K6 by March 29th. And we also would have to open 1 middle school and 1 high school. So in order to get to 10 million, that's what we'd have to do. And each day past that we don't open to that extent, we lose 1%. And then by May 15th, we lose it completely.
So
the other grant,
March 29th is only 2 weeks away. Are you guys ready?
Well, we are currently in discussions with our bargaining groups. We're trying to make it happen, but it's an ongoing and fluid situation in that regard. Yeah. And the other grant is the Expanded Learning Opportunity Grant, and we're expected to get about 21 million from that grant. The only thing is we have to have a plan. We have to modify our local accountability plan, our LCAP plan. So we'll have to do an addendum to that to incorporate what we would do with this new grant to expand learning opportunities for learning loss over the summer and over next year. So that's what we have to do there. But there's that's not any major hurdles there. We just have to create a plan. Board has to approve the plan, and then we need to act on that plan to get the funding there.
Okay. So besides these 2 grants that I'm sure you guys can achieve, are there any other revenue streams that you guys are looking into?
Any other revenue streams that we're looking into? Outside of those, not that I'm aware of. I mean, we as you know, recently in the last election, we tried to pass a parcel tax at $298, which would have generated about $18 million per year, which would have solved a lot of issues, financial issues for us. But as you know, it didn't pass. We don't really have a lot of opportunities to go after revenue as a school district.
Right.
The only mechanism we have is the parcel tax. Bryce, you have any comments on this?
Marcus, only additional comment I can make is that President Biden signed a new legislation. It's a $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan. From their plan, some money is set aside for education.
Okay.
And it's a very rough estimate. Based on very initial calculations, we can expect about $8.2 million for Fremont Unified School District.
Nice.
But again, that's a very rough calculation because more details are going to come to us for
Mm-hmm.
more accurate calculation. But initially, it seems like we can expect about $8.2 million for Fremont.
Okay. So, Marcus, going back to you, are we or are you planning on developing another ballot measure for this upcoming election to help with the revenue?
Well, I know that our district, our board are interested in doing that, but
Okay.
we want to make sure that we have the community support. It costs a
Right.
lot of money to put a ballot
Yes.
measure on. When we
Yes.
put the last parcel tax on, it cost a little over $500,000.
Wow.
So we want to make sure that if we put it on there, we've done a level of due diligence to the community in terms of the community being able to support that because it is a large endeavor. It is a
Mm-hmm.
heavy endeavor.
Now, most families who are going to be watching this show, they're going to think, okay, because they do their own budgets at their homes and their businesses, and they don't understand the complexity that you have to deal with because it's public monies. It's not like, mom's paycheck or dad's paycheck. Can you dispel any myths out there that you would like to tell the community about um, that you see out there?
Well, I mean, I think some of the myths, just from my perspective, is that I guess that we have a lot of money. I guess I'm not sure what some of the myths are, but I would imagine that or we're not managing our funds properly, which could not be further from the truth. I
Right.
mean, we get a clean audit every year, just about
Yes.
every year, in terms of the auditors being able to take a look at how we are managing our finances. And the other thing is 85 to 90% of our budget is people. So that's where our funding goes toward people. So that's why when we have these conversations about budget, it's very difficult for us to be able to make take actions that don't affect people because that is a large portion of our budget. And
Yes.
the final comment is that the money that we get from the state each year is not enough to cover our ongoing expenses.
Right.
We have ongoing expenses for health, for our salaries and benefits, expenses that our employees are entitled to
Mm-hmm.
each year that we have to pay. We still have costs from increasing costs from special education
Right.
and other contractual obligations. So the dollars that we are expending for those obligations are not enough to cover all our expenses
Right.
based on what we get from the state.
I think the biggest myth I've always heard was that why can't they make a quick decision about this? And I think Race already touched upon this, that because every budget item that you go line by line affects so many different departments. And you
Absolutely.
have to get everyone on the same wavelength,
Yeah.
to be
Yeah.
layman.
Yeah.
They
And
just
as you know,
understand.
and Kiki, as you know, if you've been a long time resident here, our residents in Fremont are very engaged.
Yes.
They, if there are slight impacts in budget that may impact their school or their child or their favorite teacher, they're going to come out and they're going to
Yes.
let us know how they feel about it. So that's why, I mean, it's just the reality. So that's why it is a challenge when we have to make difficult decisions. But we do have an active community here, so it does, yeah, it's
Which
definitely
is a good problem, actually.
it is a good problem.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Raíz, you want to say anything about that?
Yes, only additional comment I have is that we are slow, and the reason is that it's a very highly regulated industry. I should
Yes.
say industry because that's in a way it's industry. We have regulations, we have ed codes, state codes, we have
Yes.
governmental codes all over the place. So before we spend a single dime, we have to go
Uh-huh.
through the approval process, and
Yes.
that process takes time because we prepare budget items, expenditure items. They go through the layers of approvals. A final approval is Board of Education.
Yeah.
We just cannot spend money. Everything has its own unique method of approval before any single dime can be spent. Uh, Marcus and I, we are custodians of public dollars,
Yes.
tax dollars, and we
Yes.
are extremely sensitive and responsible to spend that money and
Yes.
make sure that everything is properly accounted for. And at
Mhm.
the end of the day, it's all the books we have, financial books, they're open to public.
Yes.
Anyone can come to us and ask for information, and our job is to make sure that every penny is accounted for.
Good. Excellent answer. I love that. Because I think people think $1 billion, that is a lot of money, but it doesn't cover the size of our school district and everything that we have to do to make sure everyone's safe, everyone is learning safely, and everyone is thriving, right?
That's true. That's true.
Absolutely.
Well, I cannot thank you two enough for helping us on this show. You guys were great. And I hope to see you in the future. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much.
We enjoyed being here. Thank you.
Good. From everyone here at Community Conversations, we appreciate you watching and we'll see you next time. Thank you.